The success that you desire consciously is a marathon. You know that. But your ego is causing you to treat it like it is a sprint, which is causing you to experience the burnout that you have been going through in loops and in cycles for however many years, however many months at this point. You know exactly what I mean, and if not, then I'll just clarify it for you. You know, you work with such intensity over the course of maybe a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months, where you're putting in 10, 11-hour days constantly, and you just feel like in flow state. You feel like nothing can touch you. But then you'll go through these degenerative episodes afterwards, basically you jumping back into the identity that you used to be in prior to, developing this new work ethic or this new motivation or getting into online business or whatever thing you are chasing now. And it's kind of like, your consistency, you're more consistent than the average Joe, but your consistency is more like, let's say if we were to graph it, your consistency is more like, okay, I'm super consistent, but then, oh my God, I go down into being a total degen, and then, oh, I'm super consistent again, and then, oh, I'm a total degenerate again. And you're kind of in that stasis where you're at this point where you've gone through that so many times, you're just like confused. You're like, bro, I know I have it in me, so why can't I actually get to that consistent behavior? And it's actually because you're operating from what I like to call a conditional identity. And this conditional identity operates in 4 stages that loops itself back to back to back to back so that you constantly remain in a state of confusion, but also in a state of conditional identity. And essentially the way that this works is we have stage 1. And stage 1 is kind of like the winning drug. It's like your activation energy and the thing that got you to do the thing in the first place. And it's the entire reason that you sprint, because hustle culture has essentially told us that if we work 12 hours a day, therefore we will be successful, right? Like that's the mantra of Alex Hormozi, where volume negates luck. And it's not necessarily a bad way of or mode of operation, but it's the first stage in this conditional identity. It's basically telling you, and you've internalized, that if I don't work as hard as this, therefore I am not worthy of the success that I desire. And so that loops you when you go down into this negative state of being a degenerate and being inconsistent into stage 2, which is essentially the death of your conditional identity in a bad way, not in a positive way. So you suffer from an identity death. And the reason that you suffer from this identity death right here is because the positive things that you're doing in the winning drug, when you're like working super hard, you're putting in the 12-hour days, they're only kind of weighted as 1x, right? So if we're going to look at a ledger of evidence as to who we are, identity, we'll just write it up here, identity ledger. Every time we have a positive indication that we are operating in the identity that we want to be, it's only treated as 1x. But if we have a negative indication that we're operating out of alignment with the identity that we want, so it's treated in 2x. And so when we suffer from this identity death, we're essentially in that trough. We're in that lower valley place where we're going back into our bad habits, right? We might wake up and not go to the gym at 6 a.m. and doom scroll. We might procrastinate on doing high value or high leverage things inside of our business that causes our business to slow down. Maybe we stop doing the things that actually got us to being more consistent, and then we end up being what we perceive as inconsistent. And when we do that, we weigh these inconsistent habits twice as important or twice as impactful as the positive ones. And so because of this 2x negativity bias right here, when we go into these patterns of inconsistency, we go one day in what feels like God mode, or 1 week into complete imposter syndrome, and like we don't deserve the success that is either coming to us or that we already have. And you think to yourself, because you're scrolling on Instagram and you see an Alex Hormozi reel, and you think to yourself, oh, well, he wouldn't be scrolling Instagram right now. And you're right, he wouldn't be, but he's not suffering from what you're suffering from, which leads us into stage 3. And stage 3 is essentially the fact that you're reaffirming the conditional identity that you've created for yourself in a negative way. So it's the reaffirmation, I don't know how to spell that, reaffirmation of the negative conditional We'll get there at some point. Identity. Anyway, you guys get what I mean. Negative conditional identity. And so because your conditional identity in stage 1 was essentially built on the fact that my self-worth and my success is contingent on the amount of hard work that I put in, when we operate out of alignment with that, remember, we weigh it twice as much, and then we reaffirm that we are not deserving of the success that we desire. And then our self-image suffers drastically as a result. Our self-image isn't inherently rooted in who we think we are, it's in the actions that we're putting into getting closer to the goals we have. And so if our actions are out of alignment with the things required to achieve those goals, we essentially become like depressed, or we essentially just start shit talking ourselves in our own head, and we say, hey, like, you're not good enough for this goal, and we ruin our own self-image. And so when you go and do these patterns of avoidance and you pick up your phone and you doom scroll, you look at the phone in your hand and you think to yourself inside of your mind, I knew it. I'm not meant for this. I am a fraud. This is not for me. And I mean, you know where the rest of that goes. This is gonna kind of take it all home for you, because this is probably what you're experiencing in longevity. You experience stage 4. At some juncture, maybe after a day, 2 days, 3 days, maybe even a week, who knows, you experience the panic pivot. And so at some point you finally realize, oh my God, no, I am that guy. I am capable of being consistent. I am capable of returning to stage 1 and operating from this place of consistency. And so you essentially brute force your way through having been the disgraceful degenerate, at least in your own eyes, that you were in stages 2 and 3, and then you return to stage 1. And then you have essentially an unsustainable loop of consistency that continues to repeat itself over and over and over again in perpetuity until you die. Now, the difference between what you're doing right now and what you need to be doing is that you're trying to run a race that requires long distance. Like if somebody was training for an ultra marathon or an Ironman or something, you're trying to run that race and win that race while you're sprinting every day, right? You're training for the ultra marathon by running 100 meters 5 times a day. And that really, I mean, life doesn't work that way. And so you just need to kind of readjust, your training pattern, or at least the way that you're envisioning how you're going to achieve your goal. So yes, you should be working hard. Obviously, that goes without saying. Yes, you should, occasionally put in those 12-hour days. But only put in these 12-hour days if they are high leverage. What good is it to you if you're working 12 hours if fucking 6 of those hours are spent half focused and unproductive, really, just kind of doing busy work, right? And you think that, oh, I'm being busy, or oh, I'm being productive because I work 12 hours a day, and then you go and tell your entrepreneur friends that you work 12 hours a day, but in reality you didn't get farther ahead than them who only worked 6, right? It doesn't make any fucking sense. And so you essentially just need to realign the inputs required over a longer time horizon. Instead of maybe working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, let's say, why don't you select 2 days out of the week to work 12 hours a day, and then the other days of the week, you put in a hyper focused 6-hour day. Like 0 distractions, 100% intentional deep work with pre-planning involved. And that way, what you're going to allow yourself to do is be way more consistent over longer periods of time. And then on top of that, I'm going to give you some secret sauce right now. This strategy or habit completely changed my life. Obviously, we're going to have bad days. We're not going to wake up and be perfectly motivated every single day. That is impossible. We are human beings. We are impacted by external circumstance. We can't always be perfect. And especially when we're kind of knocked out of alignment with our routine, like if you go travel somewhere for work, if you go through something emotionally intense in your life, whatever it may be, we oftentimes just get knocked completely out of our consistent selves. We went from being absolutely dialed in to just, again, completely degenerative, just because we changed physical locations, just because the gym isn't there. And so that really fucks with, or used to fuck with me, and fucks with a lot of people. So what you need to do in those circumstances is create what I like to call an MVP BVM. This is going to change your life. MVP BVM, minimum viable product of the best version of me, right? So if you have maybe 5 to 6 grounding habits that allow you to feel confidently consistent on a regular basis in your comfortable environments, when you get skewed out of your comfortable environments, maybe you travel again or you go through something inside of your life, you are just going to find maybe 3 to 4 to even 5 habits that you can easily do that are going to be the minimum viable product, again, MVP, of the best version of you. And so for me, for example, those are moving my body. You know, that could be a walk, that could be an at-home workout, that could be just anything that would involve moving my body. I journal, I will meditate, and I believe I have one more, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But those are 3 habits there that no matter what, under any circumstances, I can easily do them, and they're going to allow me to be the minimum viable product of the best version of me. Because the best version of me would always do those anyways, on top of maybe, 3 to 4 other things. And when you do this, you solve a very critical problem that I see a lot of people going through. You solve the problem of feeling as though when you go new location, okay, actually let's write down on is that the x-axis or the y-axis? I don't remember. So let's go with consistency here. And then let's go location. So super consistent, super consistent, or maybe it would be more like constant across the x-axis. So consistent, boom, travel. And then all of a sudden, consistency goes down. And then when you go back home here, let's say this was back home, then you have a hard time kind of getting back into their consistency. But if you just allow yourself to have your minimum viable product of the best version of you, then you're never going to have this trouble, because what's going to happen is that you're going to have better expectations for yourself. You're going to have a positive self-image. You're going to feel more consistent because you're completing the things that are going to be the MVP BVM of who you are when you're in this new location. And then as you maybe drop down, maybe you're going to feel a little bit less consistent, maybe just a little bit. But then right here, as a result of obviously not doing all the things that are consistent with the person that you want to be, but then right here, you're going to go boop right back up and then remain consistent again. It's that simple, right? You're just looking at success as a whole as a sprint that requires you to have so much energy expended in such a short amount of time, but it's just like life doesn't work that way, nor does success. So expand your time horizon. And what I want to leave you guys with, among the things that I mentioned today, is you guys don't need a higher ceiling of intensity, okay? You don't need to work harder. You're already working incredibly hard. You just need to be more consistent over long periods of time and have a more consistent identity with who you are outside of the scope of the inputs you do daily for your business. Stop sprinting, okay, to prove to yourself that you're worthy of the things that you want. You are worthy. You just need to act in alignment with it over longer periods of time. Pace yourself. It's not all going to come tomorrow, but it will all come guaranteed in eventuality.